twice. Jesus Christ, give me a height, not for the ride, for eternal life. Just your love, I just want a slice. Give me a slice of a piece of your pie.
GRCH Russian Bills 35. I have been asked many times if I really don't know how 35 is bred, so I'll take this opportunity to relate where he really comes from on more times. In the spring of 1980, as I was driving through Konawa, Oklahoma, my home at the time, I spotted a fellow walking a young, 9 or 10 months pit bull pup down the street. I almost kept going, but it was unusual to see a bulldog around there, so I turned around and stopped and chatted with the fellow for a few minutes. He said he got the pup from a good friend last time he was in New Mexico. He said he had no papers and didn't know how the dog was bred, but said his friend raised them out there. Not too interesting, so we parted and I didn't see either of them for several months. It was a hot summer morning and I had one of the worst hangovers of my life and almost ignored the knock on my front door. But I opened it and there stood this guy looking as bad as I felt. He was pale, sweating, and looked pretty rough. I asked what he wanted and he said, "I have to do a few months up at McAllister State Pen and I wondered if you'd give their family dolls for my dog. I know you've got bulldogs and know what they're for and it's okay if you roll him or whatever." I felt so bad I almost passed, but my inner bulldog sense won out and it told me, hell, you can't raise a pup to a year-old for $35. And I had a bunch of 2.5-year-olds that wouldn't start, so I took chance. I was never sorry. I started him at 13 months and saw immediately that he had exceptional ability and bite. At 18 months, we set up a roll for him with some local boys that had a dog about the same size that they had brought from Bean. 35 weighed 40 pounds and Mac weighed 49 pounds, but we wanted to test our dog anyway. We set them down. Mac tried his but 35 outclassed him and was biting hard. We scratched each dog a few times and both were crossing good. At 1 hour I said that I'd seen enough and suggested we scratch them and put them up. Mac's owner agreed. 35 went good, but all Mac decided he'd had enough of that hard-mouthed elusive dog, I guess, and stood his line. The rest is history. Time after time he's gone into good dog, sometimes against the odds, and he's never let me down. He has the strongest will to win I've ever seen. Those of us who have been associated with him have learned to admire and respect his old dog. He is a real bulldog. Here is 35's last 2 matches. April 1984, Russian 35 vs. Hardened Spike Malves 40 pounds. Ref Addy 35 has won 5. Breeding unknown. Conditioned and handled by Russian, weighs in at 43.4. Spike is off of Bokofus, conditioned and handled by Harden, and weighs in at 42.14. Dogs are washed and let go. 35 is his usual defensive self. Spike rears up on his hind legs trying to figure out how to get hold, and 35 follows suit. Spike tries for 35's legs with 35 putting some fancy moves working the ears. A turn was called early on Spike during his growling and rearing up act, and dogs were scratched at 20 minutes. At 30, Spike decides that if he can't whip 35 he will try and breed him, but starts at the wrong end and pays dearly for his mistake in the privates. Spike stops on his scratch at 36 minutes. Spike stops halfway across at 38 minutes and is counted out. Probably a fair dog under other conditions, but is simply outfought every step of the way at 35. Bob Wallace at Pitside remarks he is the best fighting dog he has seen in 25 years. November 1984, Russians 35 vs. McCollum's Leroy Jr. M41 Ref. Crab 35 is a 6-time winner and weighs in at 41.2. Leroy Jr. has won 2 or 3, bred by Mac, and weighs 41.12. The forfeit is waived and the fight is on. 35 is on the ears, and Leroy is pushing in the chest. The pace is fast and Leroy is breathing hard by 15 minutes, and he is still trying to put the pressure on the elusive buckskin dog. As Leroy slows down, 35 shifts to offense, working the shoulder over hard. Leroy makes several rallies but just can't get to 35 or slow him down. No turns or out of hold counts. 35 is back in Leroy's shoulder and really pouring it on, and McCollum picks up a good dog before it is too late. Leroy made it through fine. It looked like Leroy Jr. had a breathing problem, and Mac admits he tries new keep on him. I don't think he'll use it again. The time was 55 minutes, and both made hard courtesy scratches.
Pay for my sins so I can live twice. Jesus Christ, give me a heist, not for the ride, for eternal life. Just your love.